Hey, it's Ron McLean. Welcome to Hockey Talk on the Rock.
With Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
We are back doing Hockey Talk on the Rock, episode number 89. It's been darn near a month. We had a long summer hiatus, but we are back and we are going to talk some news. And then there's obviously the big news right off the top, where we start off with Canuck stuff. And the JT Miller rumors are now officially over, as he signed his big deal a few weeks ago now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in terms of like the deal itself, it's a very good deal for both sides. It's, you know, the Canucks didn't give up the 8 years, they gave 7, which I thought was kind of nice. And then it was also $8 million season, which for JT Miller's play, specific, like since he's come to Vancouver, it's definitely, like, honestly, you can probably still say he's underpaid compared to other players who are making that money in the league. Obviously, the whole thing about Miller was the, like, his age versus the age of the core and all that, which was the kind of driving the drama. And I mean, like, I'll say personally for me, the reason why I was open to trading Miller was because I thought the Canucks would get a return that would probably set them up for the future better than signing him. However, it was obvious that that trade wasn't there. I mean, they came close right at the draft with the Islanders. And there's all sorts of rumors, as you said, all last year. So all in all, I think it's smart that they kept him because, again, if you weren't going to get the return, what was the point of trading him? There wasn't. So I think it's really smart for the Canucks. Obviously, it turns the page to the next rumor that's going to be, which is going to be the Bo Horvat rumor. And I kind of think like you had to move on from one of them. And again, I like both players. I really like Bo Horvat, but I think if you sign Miller, you kind of have to move Horvat. But again, who knows if the trade is there? And I guess going back to the Miller thing a bit, like specifically about the deal, if you look at what some of these young players are making, it's kind of like, and we'll talk about that after, I'm sure, but it's interesting because the Canucks are like opposite of what other teams are doing, it seems like, in that, not all teams, obviously. I'm really like mumbling around now. Anyway, but you know what Miller is right now. He's probably going to be overpaid in the last couple of years of the deal, but you know that, right? Whereas the younger players that are signing these big deals now, you're hoping that they're going to be something great, but you don't know for sure. Or they've had one good year or a couple good years and you're hoping they're going to stay that way. So there's risk in both types of deals is what I'm trying to say, and we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there's talk that like the cap's supposed to go up by somewhere around like 15 million over the next few years, which is kind of insane and would be hugely beneficial to like Vancouver. But what the deal, the Miller deal essentially does, in combination with like Thatcher Demko's contract, is basically puts them in a 4-year window right now, you know, with 1 year left on Miller's cheap deal, and then the first 3 years of this contract where he's going to be up, you know, I think everyone agrees, still playing to that high value, alongside with like Quinn Hughes' deal, and you know, Besser's deal and stuff like that.
And even Pettersson too.
Yeah, depending on Pettersson, both with the cap going up and depending on what he does this year.
Yeah,
a lot of uncertainty with what that's going to look like, but it basically, yeah, like I say, it's like they have a 4-year window now, mainly due to the Demko contract, but the Miller contract plays into that. And go ahead.
The only thing I was going to say about that, and I think this is the, not like the issue, but it's the thing that Canucks fans are unsure about, is like they're so top heavy, and after this season, after this off season, they're more top heavy, right? You've added Mikheyev, you've added Kuzmenko. I mean, Kuzmenko's kind of a wild card, but he's going to fill a forward position. And then you look at the back end, and the only real difference that they have right now is that they have De Keyser on the PTO. So like it still seems like something has to give when you talk about, like, for me, talking about the Canucks being in a window. It's like they still have so much work to do on that back end. And I know like they're experimenting now with Quinn Hughes on the right side to try and see if that will fix their right side problem and stuff like that, but it just feels like something has to give still with the roster, and I think that's why Canucks fans are a little bit confused.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see with Boudreau behind the bench for a full year and coming in with the offseason to prepare what he can do with the systems to try and improve that. And, you know, I think this first year will be kind of like, you know, they must be looking at it like a step forward, but not necessarily expecting the cup this year. But because after this year, they're going to finally have like dead money coming off the books with Luongo and another buyout and stuff like that. And so we'll see what it looks like ultimately next year. But I think this has got to be a major like stepping stone forward type season for all of them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, again, I think they should be able to, right? Like everything you're saying, I totally agree with. I think that they obviously played way better under Boudreau than they did under Green. And even if they don't play to the same level that they played like the second half of the season, because that's probably, I don't want to say unattainable because they did it, but it's like best case scenario, right? I think they should still be a playoff team this year. And if they're not, then there's a big problem. That's the way I see it. But again, you're right. There should be more cap and all that. But it's just like there's something about the team that for me personally, I still don't totally understand what they're doing. And it would have been nice to have like some direction. But I understand what you're saying.
That will tell. That will tell. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of banking on improved play from the forwards defensively to help out the defense core is really what it all comes down to.
And I mean, Thatcher Demko is the other like part of that equation too, right?
Yeah.
I think we all agree that he is. I think he's a top 5 goalie in the NHL right now. And that might be insane to say, but I do believe it. And I think that, we'll see. See what happens with the season.
But training camp's opening pretty quick here, so things are getting really exciting, and we're like, less than 3 weeks away from the season, so.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to talk quickly about training camp, like there's 2 things I think that are interesting to people. The first being that right now it looks like Hoglander is not on the team. So if you're reading into, which Boudreau kind of said to read into his line combinations at training camp, it looked like he was skating on a Abbotsford line, basically. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, he's 21 years old, and he should have to fight for a roster spot. I think that's good. I still think he's an NHL player, but he's obviously like a question mark, and he's one of the players who played worse under Boudreau than he did under Green. So that will be just an interesting situation to watch. And then the other one is that Tyler Myers was paired with Danny DeKeyser at training camp, which again, if you're reading into things, looks like they're giving him at least a legitimate shot to make the team. So those are just 2 situations that I thought were interesting from today, and we'll see.
Mm-hmm. So was it Ekman Larson paired with Hughes then?
Yes. And Hughes was on the right.
And so then it had Dermott and Shen together?
Actually, I think it might have been Dermott and Pullman. I can't remember who Shen was playing with. It might have been Rathbone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, there will be lots of storylines that will come out of camp. I'm really excited to see Kuzmenko because obviously we haven't gotten to see him play at all yet. So it'll be interesting to watch how he fits in with the group. And I think the preseason games and all that will be entertaining for those kind of battles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then other than that, I guess we got some league-wide news we can talk about.
Yeah, so I mean the big one I feel like is there's a new highest paid player in the league. Yeah, so Nathan McKinnon, 8 years, $100.8 million. So cap hit of $12.6 million a year, which is just, a little bit over what McDavid was making, as you said. And I mean, I don't think anyone's totally surprised by this, particularly because McKinnon was so underpaid for so many years. Like, do you think if they hadn't won the cup, he would have commanded that much money?
No, I don't think it would have been like a whole bunch less, but I think it would have been less.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. And I mean, everything we've talked about today too, right, still applies. Like the salary cap's going up. They must be so happy that they have Makar like locked up now. That's all I gotta say about that one. And yeah, I mean, the next few years for contracts is going to be very interesting to watch. Like I said to you, I think Matthews will jump over McKinnon when he's up, and probably McDavid will jump over both of them when he's up. But they're pushing it upwards now, so see what happens. And then the whole thing about, no team with a player in the double digits has ever won the Stanley Cup, and only Carey Price was like the only player, right, to reach the final with a double-digit cap hit. So it's all like, I don't know, nerdy stuff to watch, which I like.
Yeah, no, well deserved. I thought it was interesting, kind of side note, that how few captains have won the cup that are like of European descent.
It's
like
weird.
I just randomly came across the stat that like there's only been 4 captains in the NHL history from European and Russian descent.
And it's recent too, because like for a long time there hadn't been one. And by recent, it's probably like 15 years.
Lidstrom's like one of the oldest ones, but then there's like Ovechkin and Landeskog, and then I can't remember the other one.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember too. But Chara?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it is weird. I mean, for a long time I feel like it was just that, well, not necessarily, but they were less likely to be given like the opportunity to be captain. So part of it was that. But yeah, anyway, I think we both agree like McKinnon, that deal makes sense. I don't think people can really argue that he's overpaid. I think it's pretty legit.
Yeah, and like to say, for how little he was making compared to like his value for the last deal, his 6-year deal or whatever it was, he definitely deserved a giant pay bump.
Yeah.
So yeah, on that note, because he brought up Chara, I guess we can quickly talk about the 3 big retirements that all happened that one morning.
Yeah.
Chara retiring, and then Keith Yandle retiring, and then maybe the most surprising one was PK Subban calling it a career too.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounded like all 3 of them, I think, actually did have offers from teams for this year, but they decided that either the situation wasn't right or they just weren't in it anymore. Which, I mean, is probably not that surprising, but all 3 of those guys had pretty impressive careers. I mean, obviously, as a Canucks fan, you've got a little bit of bitterness about Chara, but like to play for that long is impressive, and he who's played the most games out of any defenseman in NHL history, which is pretty crazy. And then you have the whole Yandle game streak, which is pretty impressive. And then like PK Subban when he was in Montreal, and then the first couple years in Nashville anyway, was like a very entertaining player to watch. Like you can't deny it. Is a polarizing character, but he definitely brought something different to the game. So
yeah, and you have to figure that he must just, like, there was rumors last year that he wasn't, dedicated to the game anymore, and with his obvious like ability to be part of the media, like he's obviously going to have a gig and be able to stay in and around the game.
Yeah, like kind of the rumor that I heard too was like he either wanted to go back to Montreal or he wanted to play in Toronto, and he didn't want anything else. And then when it was obvious that like neither one of those things were going to happen, he was like, yeah, no, I don't want to do anything. And as you say, he's obviously going to have people lining up for him to fill media roles anyway. But I listened to him talk a little bit, and the line that kind of stuck out to me was he's like, I always thought of myself as being just a person who happened to be good at hockey, so it didn't really like define my life. And I think it goes with what you just said, right? Like probably for a while he was super dedicated to it, but then when he started aging and he just wasn't as good, he probably was like, yeah, no, I'm kind of moving out or something.
Mhm.
But yeah,
End of an era.
end of an era. They're all retiring.
Mhm.
And then
Right.
yeah, there's a few other like signings of note since we've been gone. And all involved kind of the same style player, right? So you had the Tage Thompson deal, you had the Stutzla deal, you had the Kyrou deal. I think that's really it for those types. And they all signed like big money, big term. I think like for me, the most surprising was probably Tage Thompson.
Because one good year.
Yeah, but I guess like Buffalo is pretty desperate to have people commit to that team for obvious reasons. So
Yeah.
maybe not that surprising, but he's gonna have to live up to that contract. Otherwise, it's gonna be pretty tough for him. I think both with Stutzla and Kyrou, like there's enough there that you can kind of see what players they're gonna be. But again, it's kind of the opposite of the JT Miller thing, right? Because the first couple of seasons they might not be worth $8 million. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Stutzel's showed, especially the second half of last year, that he's going to be a special player. But like, I felt like last year was more of like Kyrou's establishing himself as a star in the league, whereas he was kind of already breaking out the year before that. So
Yeah.
that deal made more sense to me than the other ones.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But and then he was an all-star too, I think, last year.
Yeah, he won the fastest skater, which was
Right.
kind of cool. And then yeah, the other Ottawa Senator news is that they signed my boy, Tyler Motte.
Oh yeah, right.
So, go Sens.
Yeah, well, that'll be good depth player for them for sure.
Their forward group is really good. The defense is not, but we'll see what they'll be a fun team to watch anyway.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too to see if like how big of a step Jake Sanderson can take in the league, because if he becomes a player right off the hop, that changes things quite a bit for them.
Yeah. And then yeah, the only other thing I can think of is like there's been a bunch of PTOs, and obviously the controversial one is your hot take was correct, and Jake Virtanen did get a PTO with the Oilers, and it's caused a whole swirl of animosity towards the team. But all I'm gonna say is like it is surprising based on his play. Like even if you took out all the drama off the ice, I think it would be kind of surprising. Well, not necessarily, but like not for a PTO, but he wasn't a good NHL player for the Canucks. So it just seems kind of weird, but we'll see if he shows up out of shape for their camp and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting, and I'll take it because that gives me a hot take, which puts me well on my way to beating my total for last year's hot takes.
Yeah, you're like
But
1.5 or something.
What's that, sorry?
You're at like 1.5 or something.
I was 1.5 already.
Yeah.
I only got 3 last year, so
That's pretty good, yeah.
I'll take it. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if it translates into a real contract for him, whether it be with the Oilers or with someone else. Like I joked with my other hockey pool group that it'll get him a contract in Arizona because
yeah, they need.
I can just see it. They need players.
Yeah, I could see it too.
But if I had to bet, I would say he ends up playing in Europe or Russia again.
Yeah, I can't see it working out in Edmonton. However, they obviously don't mind picking up players like again with controversies in their background. But Evander Kane is a lot better of a hockey player than Jake. So yeah, and it's not like if you look at their roster, like I was trying to think about who we would kind of jump over in their lineup, and there isn't really that many players. Like he could play on their fourth line, but what's the point?
Yeah.
And unless they're moving out Puljujarvi, which there's all sorts of rumors that they're going to, but like Virtanen is definitely a step down from Puljujarvi, so why would you do that?
Right.
Stuff like that. So I can't see it working in Edmonton. I could definitely see it in Arizona for the reasons that you've just said. But or maybe even like Chicago.
Yeah, I was thinking Chicago too, and that was purely only based on needing bodies.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's kind of everything that's happened in the last little bit.
Yeah, there hasn't been much because it's like we talked about before, the dog days of summer, but training camps are heating up and then the regular season coming up quick, so we'll be able to get back at this more regularly and have actual real things to talk about.
Yeah, and the whole training camp stuff kicking off, it's exciting. There'll be lots of storylines there, so getting
Awesome.
getting pumped.
Yeah, totally. All right, well, until the next time, this has been Hockey Talk on the Rock, episode number 89, and we'll be back sometime soon.
Woo!